you got to realize that whatever you're doing, you're competing with somebody. What is it that gives you an advantage over your competition? Whatever you're good at, try to be great at it. And if you're great at it, good things will happen.
Maverick. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. This is the Maverick Podcast. I'm your host, DJMaverick. Today, we have another super talented guest in the building. We have the one and only Guadalupe Garcia, owner of Trompudos Tacos. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Very cool, very cool. Before we dive into everything, for the 1% of the people out there that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Guadalupe Garcia, born and raised here in Oklahoma City, in South OKC. I'm one of, so I've got two brothers, two sisters. My dad is Marcelino, elephant in the room, Marcelino Garcia, owner and founder of Chelinos. That's always kind of a weird one. Like it feels weird saying that because it sounds kind of like a humble brag, but trust me, it's not a talking point that I like to bring up that often. Especially like even just with my restaurant. Like if you notice, a lot of people, and it's intentional. I don't want people to know who it is because I want people to either like the food for what it is.
Yeah.
That the food's good, not because who owns it or who's associated. It's just I want the food to speak for itself.
That makes sense, yeah, because even like people struggle with that sometimes, right? Like if you think about Vicente Fernandez and his kids, right? Like those are big shoes to fill, right? So sometimes it could be a blessing in disguise. Sometimes it could hurt you, right? Having that name, that pressure, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think, unfortunately and fortunately, the way, it's a double-edged sword. I think a lot of people are going to look at you and compare you to, your upbringing and.
He's like, that he has it easy, right? Like,
oh my gosh,
his dad set him up, right? No hustle, right?
It's crazy because whenever I started, whenever I opened up on South May, I mean, I was there 18 hours a day, and like I still have like I'll get my snap memories.
Yeah,
and, like it's me at 3 or 4 in the morning fixing this, fixing that,
man,
doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and I'll never forget. Like, I would always post like I just don't ever want to hear that I was lucky.
Yeah.
Because
I get it.
And it sucks because it's like somebody can take that away from you or try to, belittle the amount of work that you put into something just based off where you come from,
Right. Yeah, I get that. I always see that with musicians a lot, especially where it's like, their family comes from like a big like history of being successful. And it's like, no talent, no hustle, like it was handed to them, right?
Well, even like Julio Cesar Chavez, Jr., like I feel for that guy. Like
it's tough.
I kudos to him. I think he deserves more props than he's given. Obviously, not to the same level of, or his boxing wasn't to the same level as his father, but for him to jump into that world, knowing what he was getting into, like that's, right. I mean, I think you got to respect that. So
yeah, definitely. Let me ask you an important question though. Yeah. Was there ever a time that you maybe wanted to do something different, right? Like it is the family business, but maybe, you want to do other things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, so my dad comes from my parents, both of them come from the same part of Mexico. Mm-hmm. And it's a real small, poor farming town, So my dad came to America when he was 14. And my parents always instilled in us the importance of education, and he told us, thankfully he was successful. His dream was to open one restaurant.
Yeah.
And God blessed him for his hard work and his dedication and his head, his strategy to grow. And he always told us like, you can make a good living from here. Like you won't be the richest man in the world.
Right.
He's like, but you can make a good living and take care of your family. And if that's something you're interested in, that's here, this is what I worked for. But if you want to do something else in your life, like the door's open. Like he always told us like, you can do whatever you want in life. Just, échale ganas.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, that's awesome. Because sometimes you get, maybe pressure that, hey, like this is a family business. You're kind of expected to carry on that legacy, right?
Oh, absolutely. And like, I think that's kind of one of the unique parts of my business is like, people, whenever they find out, like, you know, they're like, oh, and one of the things that I'm just going to go ahead and say it, like, it does bother me is like when people try to compare the food that I make and say, oh, like yours is better than your, like, I'm like, no, you guys have no idea.
Right.
Like when my dad started, it was 1989. You know, the Latino Hispanic community here was, I mean, it was like 30, 40, you know, no, everybody knew each other, you know,
right.
especially in South OKC. So when my dad first opened, he opened with the intention of doing, you know, more traditional style cooking. You know, he sold caldo de res, you know, barbacoa and stuff like that. You know, because he came from Nino's Mexican Restaurant, which is was a big chain, and Cesar Aita, may he rest in peace. He was like my dad's, you know, advisor, basically, you know.
Okay, kind of like a mentor type of thing.
Well, my dad was like his right hand man, you know. Whenever Nino was growing, you know, blowing up, kind of when he was expanding, and so my dad always had like a lot of respect for him, and it was a mutual respect between each other. So whenever my dad opened, Nino literally gave him the keys to the warehouse, said, "Go grab whatever you need." He's like, and if it doesn't work out, come back home.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's
so whenever he first started, he opened up as you know, more traditional, what he knows, you know, what he grew up with. But in 1989, it's a completely different world, you know.
Right.
Nothing, you know,
I mean, even nowadays, right? Like, I think that's always a struggle. If you try to innovate with Mexican food, sometimes it's like, you know, of course, like the Hispanic people, they want you to stay traditional, right? But I think nowadays you have to innovate. Maybe tell me a little bit about that, right?
Yeah.
How do you like sort of balance those two? You want to innovate, you want to try new things, but then you also want to stay true to that culture, right?
Yeah, that's definitely something that's tough, and that's a blessing that I have on my end, you know. With Instagram and all social media now, it's, you know, the doors are open to different cuisines. Whereas, you know, going back to that example, 1989, nobody knew what barbacoa was, you know.
That's true.
Everybody knew what enchiladas were,
Yeah.
you know, so he ended up reverting back to what he worked in with Nino's, you know, selling enchilada, Tex-Mex, you know, some would even argue to say Okie-Mex.
Right.
But so, because at the end of the day, it was a business. You know, he needed to make money. He needed to provide. You know, he had all, you know, he bought that all. It was an old Dairy Queen. He bought that. And, I mean, he put everything on the line. And I owe the world, you know, everything I owe to him, you know. So it does bother me that people try to compare my food and say, like, oh, yours is better. It's like, you know, if you put me and my dad on a cook-off, I mean, he'll whoop my ass, you know.
And it's a different concept, right? So
absolutely.
We were talking about that too, how, you know, it wasn't really meant to be a standalone,
correct,
you know, restaurant. So tell me a little bit about that,
yeah.
how it started off, and then how did you end up with like full-blown standalone restaurant?
Yeah, it's funny how things kind of work out when you don't even, you know, when you least expect it. You know, I wasn't expecting any of it to happen. Essentially, what happened was during the pandemic, I read a lot on the restaurant industry, you know, get a lot of newsletters, articles, and stuff like that. But essentially, I saw that on the East Coast and West Coast, these things were popping up called virtual brands, you know. And so it was, you know, these kitchens utilizing their existing space to increase revenue.
Yeah, I think even influencers, YouTubers do that, right?
Mr.
Where
Beast,
it's like
Mr. Beast Burger.
Yeah, it's like a ghost kitchen.
Yeah,
right?
he's in a whole ordeal right now trying to get into that deal, you know. But But yeah, that essentially, you know, reading what was going on, looking for ways to utilize the space we already have and increase revenue. I was like, well, you know, why don't we, you know, because I've always had an itching for a fast casual concept, right?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to scratch at that surface because I saw, like, you know, when Chipotle basically grew to the size it did, witnessing that happen, you know, live essentially, or you could see where the market was heading, you know. And again, I read a lot of articles, stuff like that. I know where the market's going. The next generation of consumers, we're on the go. We're always up and down, up and down. We need something quick, something good, you know. And typically when we think about something quick, we think fast food. Obviously not the greatest choice of quality or, you know, nutrition wise.
Yeah.
So
I think there's a difference though, right? Because there's like fast food, let's say like McDonald's, and then the Chipotle.
Oh yeah.
So what would you call that? Like an upscale fast food? I don't know what the term is for it in the restaurant interest, right?
So it's actually gets a little complicated.
Yeah.
Funny enough. So traditionally, restaurants were kind of broken down to full service or, you know, limited service was what it was called, you know. Well, now limited service basically is broken off. There's fast casual and there's QSR, quick service.
Okay.
And then, so those are two subcategories, but some of those attributes from one category, fall in line. It's like a Venn diagram. Is that what they're called? Venn diagram?
Yeah.
They kind of
they kind of fall in between.
Right. So there's, you could have a certain concept depending, a lot of it, like an easy way to differentiate them is like wait time. So basically, both of them are going to be like counter service. A QSR, like Chipotle, as you're ordering down the line, by the time you pay, you're building your meal there. So you receive it quickly. A fast casual, think of it anywhere between, by the time ordering, somebody will deliver the food for you to your table, and it's typically within 5 to 10 minutes.
That's cool. It seems like
That's
you've
an
done
easy
your
way.
homework, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I imagine you maybe like, pulling up to the drive-through and kind of observing, taking notes and seeing what they're doing. Have you done some of that stuff or what?
I've done a ton of that. I'm ashamed. I've got, if I could show you my ChickfilA account, I've got, I think they made that 4th membership tier because of me, literally. And what's funny is I wasn't a fan of it. I didn't, it was good. I've never thought it wasn't good, but I just didn't get the hype.
Right.
But especially once, because at my concept, I offer a drive-through. I've been blessed to never have another job other than working with my dad. So something as simple as like working the drive. I remember the first day I opened, when I heard that first boom, I froze.
Yeah, because
I had no idea what to do.
You're like, what's up, right?
I had everything. I did all the research. I got the menu board. I got the whole system, the HME system for the drive-through. That first car pulled up, and boom, and I literally froze. And then luckily the girl that was there would, she already had experience. She's boom. The first thing she says, "Trompudos, what can I give you?" I was like,
nice.
Okay, cool. This works.
It's under control. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I study a lot of Chick-fil-A, and and it's funny. I feel kind of bad for them because I'll purposely I'll try to find where the limits are.
Okay.
So like for example, breakfast. Obviously a switchover. I feel bad for them because the switchover. I've never worked in another job, but I know I read enough and to know that a switchover is not fun.
Right.
It's hard. I mean, you're literally switching menus in the middle without closing. So there's a lot of different nuances that go on in that moment. So I would purposely try to push the limit to see how far will they actually serve me breakfast.
So you're like at 10:29 or something.
Oh no, I'd be there 10:35.
Okay.
And I'd be like,
right.
hey, I got a mobile order. Oh, like the good. I found this one. I think they got rid of the curbside because of me. I just want to say because I would order it for curbside pickup, and I already knew the parking spot. So, it'd be like 10:29, send it in, and then immediately put I'm here.
Yeah.
And then I'm literally on the way, and there was like once where they literally come like, hey, we don't see you.
No.
So, but it's just trying to find where the limits are. I like to push the limits on a lot of things. With innovation as well, technology, the culinary side. For example, my salsas, I offer 6 different unique salsas.
I was gonna say I've been to your spot, and you have like a pairing compared to whatever taco. You have a special sauce, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, so when I first started Trompudos, again, going back to the virtual brand, I started operating at the first practice because I didn't know how to, I knew I wanted to do, so we came up with the branding, told my dad what I want to do. The idea was to basically launch that brand online and utilize our existing spaces. So it would be online only, but it would be its own branding and everything like that. And then what was cool about that, the idea was to implement a little bit of that, like the al pastor, the trompo, into the Chelino's menu. So I had never built a trompo, so I didn't know what it took to get to that. So, naturally I told my dad we had a meat market. I was like, hey, since we have the meat there, we have a kitchen there, let me try it out of here first.
Okay.
Started doing that, and he would come by and I mean, when it was just me, he'd come by and he'd see people actually people that you could tell would never normally be in that store because the store was hidden kind of like the storefront is on Western. Excuse me. But if you're not looking for it, if you know what you're going for, you'll drive right past it.
I see.
And he would see people come in, and going for the tacos. So he's like, oh, okay, I think they're onto something, So
that's cool.
And eventually it got to the point where I couldn't run it just myself. I started having to steal like the employees from there, like, hey, get me.
I need some help.
Yeah, I need like 30 tacos. I got to order for 30 tacos. Will you help me out? So, and he would see that. He's like, oh. Eventually, he's like, you know what? I think it's time you look for a spot. So I was like, oh, wow. So he gave me his blessing at that moment. And I was like, cool, I'll do it. So
that's cool. But you were never like, that wasn't in the plan. You just wanted to be sort of a ghost kitchen type of thing and just like worked out of that.
Oh,
kitchen.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the idea was to do that, virtual brand and work them out of the restaurants, increase revenue at the restaurants. And a lot of like, even just the customers were like, cause I would tell them, I would talk with them cause they could see me on the other side of the counter.
Yeah.
As I was, prepping their tacos and we'd chit chat and, I'd let them know what the ideas were. They're like, no, this can't be online only. Like you need your own, like even customers would tell me that. And I was like, okay,
that's a good problem to have.
Hey man, I'll take it all day.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to go out of their way to say something, like that if it's not true, if they don't believe in it. So
right, I always hear location when it comes to.
Oh man,
is that true? Like does that make or break restaurants at times or what?
It's funny because absolutely, it has everything to do. Where we're at, we're on Southwest 59th and May. For those who don't know, it was old Taco Mayo actually, and I was like, so after that happened, when my dad was like, look for a spot, I started looking immediately. I was looking for like 4 or 5, almost 6 months.
Oh man,
because it needed to have a drive-through.
Okay,
that was one of the key elements. Like I needed to have a drive-through, and I know a lot of people would probably have gotten impatient, and I almost lost my patience too. I was ready to go,
Yeah.
And customers were like, that would show up like, hey, where are we at? Like when are we opening it? I was like, I'm still looking. But anyways, a lot of people, that particular part of Southwest 59th and May isn't the greatest now, in retrospect now, with the homeless problem. For example, in retrospect now, there's a lot of homelessness everywhere.
I see.
But that never deterred me. there's, you're never going to, if you look for a perfect scenario in anything, in any aspect of life, I don't think you'll ever get anything accomplished. You got to make do with what you got, And
also budget, right? So you could find like the most awesome location, but like leasing or buying the numbers, it's gonna be a nightmare, right?
They have to make sense.
Absolutely.
I've been, a lot of people are like, hey, because customers will come in and we did pretty good with the branding and stuff like that. And they'll ask them, hey, is this a chain? I'm like, not yet.
Yeah, where did the Trompudos come from, by the way? Like, where did that come from?
That's actually, that's a pretty funny story. So I knew I wanted to whenever we're coming up with the branding for the virtual kitchen, or for the virtual brand, I knew I wanted to do Al Pastor.
Okay.
And knowing the importance of branding, I was like, the name's got to be on it.
On point, yeah.
So.
And it has to work both in English and Spanish, I think. Right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Chipotle, for example, un chile chipotle, it's in Spanish. That's chipotle, but in English, it works. Right. It works.
Yep.
And people understand it and everything. So that was a challenge because I didn't want to put Lupes tacos, for example. Because when you do that, there's a Lupes taco. I always say there's a Lupes tacos here, and even different cities, different Lupes tacos in Colorado and
That's
Wyoming.
True.
There's a Lupe in every city.
Yep.
So try to come up with something, and I noticed that a lot of taco. So I wanted to use the word trompo, or incorporate the trompo into the name, so people knew immediately.
Okay, I see where we're going.
Immediately, because I want people to know. Because I noticed, there was not a lot of, there's only very few places that were offering trompo. A lot of places would advertise, but it wasn't actually trompo. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you wouldn't know any better.
Right.
So I know I wanted to tap into. I saw an untapped market there, so I was like, man, that's something that we need. I love Al Pastor tacos, and I think the majority of people do, especially.
I was gonna say, when I think trompos, I think Las Vegas.
Oh, los tacos. Right? Well, that's actually a lot of the inspiration. A lot of the inspiration for Trompudos comes from when I went and visited Las Vegas in like 2017.
Okay.
I just remember seeing it, and first of all, the amount of customers there is insane.
Yeah.
Given it's Las Vegas location, going back to location, right. They nailed it. They nailed it. Plus, on top of that, they have a great concept. And I just always remember thinking, like, it sucks because when I go out to eat, I'm always just watching. So it's kind of hard for me to
to actually enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, of course I do enjoy the food, but especially if I have company, like I feel bad for them because like we can be having a conversation and
you're like timing the waiter.
Well,
like,
yeah, I'm sitting over here watching
Yeah.
like, okay, what happens when this,
Yeah.
oh, okay, this, just looking at operations and procedures and stuff like that. And I remember seeing Tacos El Gordo. The only thing that food is fantastic and the whole concept is cool because I mean it goes back to when you're in Mexico, for example, you go to un taquero, you sit down and he just asks you, cuántos, the famous cuántos,
Yep.
that's all he asks. And I saw that and I was like, man, that's awesome that they're bringing that here, So the only thing I remember thinking like, what was like, wasn't very efficient. It was like, man, what if I want adobada and I want, because they call there's different terms for adobada, asada, and suadero. I'm only, if I have a group of friends in Las Vegas, more than likely you're gonna be, oh, you go to that line, but I'm just
Right.
like, what if it's just me? Like,
Yeah, you're gonna break.
I'm
the
not gonna
system.
go, I'm not gonna go here, there,
Yeah.
So especially with the lines. So I was like, man, there's got to be a way to incorporate, to offer that quality, that product, also paying homage to that original taquero experience, but making it more efficient.
Yeah, tell me about building the trompudo because that's
man.
like a whole science in itself, right? People think that it just comes together, but you have to like build it.
Oh, it's built layer
and
by
then
layer.
the way that it's cooked, like walk me through that process.
And so it's funny. I gotta give a shout out to my good buddy Abel, Abel Ramos from Abel's Mexican Restaurant.
Okay,
50th.
shout out.
That's my good my good buddy is my best friend. Shout out to him. He actually, I remember the first time, so I got the meat, cut it, marinated it, in the adobo. And then when it was time to build it, I remember I built it, I'd watch videos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's kind of one of those things where it's kind of secretive, a lot of people don't like to share.
It's an art.
Yeah.
man.
It's well, I think there's a lot of ego in it,
Yeah.
because it's hard work and I get it, But luckily I found, I was able to find some videos of people sharing, their knowledge and guide you, basically show you how to do it. So I I understood how to do it. I understood the assignment, but just doing, completing the assignment was, let's just say it was, he called it a blob. When I sent him a picture, I was like, hey, he's like, oh, nice blob.
He's like,
and
it doesn't
I
look
was
like a
so
trompo.
heartbroken. No, he called it a nice blob. And
Yeah.
I was sad because I was actually really happy that I was able to make a trompo,
Yeah.
but obviously even trompo, it's a shape as well, like the spinning tops, the little toys,
Right.
that's where it gets its name from because of, the figure that it's shaped in.
Yeah, and you're building it piece by piece, right? And then when you're serving it, you kind of have to be careful how far you cut into it.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's not fully cooked right through the center, right?
Right.
So you have to be like
You have to be
skilled,
on the
right?
Oh, absolutely. So like when I first started at the meat market, the equipment that I had was it was like Optima is what it's called, the brand, and they're used for gyros, and the difference there is it's the lamb is like ground, so it's shaped differently. It's a different meat. There's different cook temps. Basically, the trompo you see in Mexico with the big old dragon's breath, it's built like that for a reason. There's a certain reason why it's built that way. The little machine, going back to that machine I had, it was nowhere near the same because like the ones in Mexico, they're literally like furnaces. They have like those ceramic bricks that retain heat. So even when the flame's off, if those bricks are heated, it'll continue to cook that meat.
I see.
Yeah, but absolutely, you got to be.
Yeah, because if you
gotta
go
be
to the
skilled.
wrong taquero and he cuts too deep, I think you might end up getting sick with the meat not being fully cooked,
absolutely.
right?
So that's one of the things. So it takes skill and it takes practice more than anything, and a very sharp knife. And you got to know how to sharpen your knife. You got to know what type of knife to use. It's like anything in life, the more you do it, the better you get. So like, even to this day, I like to, and I always tell the employees, whoever the trompero is, even now I've got a girl that does it in the morning, so even women, because traditionally in Mexico, not even women, you go to the taquero, it's a taquero.
Yeah.
It's always typically a man, that's doing everything. But no, we've come up with a system, we've trained him, we've showed him, which I think is really cool. It's always awesome for me to see, and she's a little small girl, but man, she has a big old knife, man. It's funny.
That's awesome. So how early do you have to start like building it? Do you build it every day, or how does that work?
Yeah, so typically we build one a day.
Okay.
So for example, right now, earlier today, like at 3:00 or so, we start building the next one.
Okay.
So we have one. It's like the one that was built today. We cut the meat, marinate it one day. Mm-hmm. The next day we build it, right? And by that last day, the meat's ya está adobada.
Okay.
And in the shape of the trompo, that's when you want it, because that's got 48 hours of marination.
Yeah.
So,
that's
and then
awesome.
it's ready to go. So I always tell people, it's funny because people are like, going back to what I mentioned about a lot of people not actually offering the trompo. Even to this day, I get customers like, oiga, like, ¿y a poco si tienen trompo? I'm like, yeah.
They don't believe it.
They don't believe it. I will bring it back to the kitchen. I was like,
they want to see it.
I was like, ¿se gustan pasar? And I'll bring it back. I'll let them know, just be careful.
Yeah.
And they see it, and they,
That's
you
awesome.
can tell they get happy.
Yeah.
And I told them, si me llega a acabar, tengo otro. I was like, you will never,
Yeah.
if that ever happens, I hope not. If there's ever a day I don't have I don't know what to do, because that's literally that's what I always instill. Like, I always les encargo mucho, like, make sure we always have that extra trompo,
Yeah, just ready to go.
ready to go.
But that speaks volumes, right? Like how true you have to stick with traditions and how much that matters, right? Like you don't typically say like, "Hey, do you have the real thing? I want to see it. Let me go check out your kitchen," right?
Yeah, so because going back to like Tacos del Gordo, obviously you can see it, and so you're looking at it, which is what I wanted to do, So I had that. I wanted it an open kitchen behind the front register where you could see into the kitchen, specifically so you can see the trompo. But that required adding a whole new ventilation system, which was like $35,000. And obviously I'm leasing the place, so it's just like,
yeah, it's a big investment.
It's a big investment for a property that's not mine. The day after tomorrow, for whatever reason,
Right.
I end up somewhere else or whatever. Mm-hmm. That investment stays there. So, hopefully praying one day that if I am able to purchase that property, that's the first thing I'm going to do.
So from the first time that drive-through intercom went off, was it a success or was there a struggle to get it off the ground? Like, walk me through that, because every business, especially I think like restaurants, are super difficult to get off the ground, right?
Absolutely. Honestly, I've been blessed. So it's been a blessing, because when we launched, going back to the original idea of the virtual brand, I started focusing heavily on the social media, knowing the importance of it. And I do all the social media. And so I was hitting it hard, man. I mean, and that's work. I'll tell you what,
It's a full-time job.
Dude, I mean, literally, as far as taking the right picture, right angle, how to edit it properly, knowing different aspect ratios for different purposes,
What are the trends? What are the music? Like, what are people digging?
And,
right?
trends are changing every day, every single day there's a new trend started. So that's a ton of work. But I went through that and started slowly growing, so eventually there was a decent little following for a virtual brand. Like I said, my dad would see people like,
That's
like,
awesome.
oh man, they're coming to look for you. I'm like, yeah, Dad, like, we're doing it, So by the time, before I even, so when I signed the lease, I had to hire staff. That was kind of hard for me, because I've always been the owner's son. I've never been the boss.
Yeah.
You can have the title and everything, but at the end of the day, it's a whole another world, because I feel bad, and like there's been plenty of times where I tell my dad, like, I get it now, like, because I used to get into it with my dad.
Oh,
like,
really?
Oh yeah, like, Dad, why you let them get away with this? Like, why don't we do this? And he's like, oh, and I just couldn't understand it. But now, like in retrospect, and we just laugh about it now. I'm like, I get it. I get it.
Yeah, I think the other cool aspect, or maybe not cool, you tell me, is that there's a lot of tech involved with restaurant now too, right? So you have like different POS machines, even like apps for rewards and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on like how heavy like tech is getting into everything, basically?
Tech is everything, and if you don't believe me, just let's not go back too far. When the start of the pandemic, unfortunately nobody saw it coming, right? But what ended up happening is everybody was scrambling to get online, to get on, third party. When you invest that, we had it a lot better than a lot of different states. But when you couldn't dine in or you know,
everything was supposed to be touchless.
Yeah,
right?
you were home, right? No contact.
Yeah.
If you weren't online, I mean, good luck, literally,
Yeah.
because I mean that was the easiest way, and that, you know, everybody else that was online, they were going to beat you. You know, at the end of the day, you're in competition with everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, so it's very important. You know, like I said, if you don't believe it, if you haven't seen it yet, like, let's not go back too far. Let's just, you know, the start of pandemic. You know, that was the beginning of it, which the industry was already moving that way. You know, you have to, and that's one of the things that we were blessed with. Was like, so whenever I was still working with my dad, I had basically launched the online ordering with a local company called Tap Tap Eat here in Edmond, Oklahoma.
Okay.
So we launched that. So we were already online when the pandemic started. We were already ahead, you know, and that's a big help, you know. If that's why I read so much. That's why I'm on top of. I try to be on top of what's going on. What are the new trends? Because you don't want something like that to happen, and you get hit, you know, blindsided.
Right. You don't want to become a dinosaur, basically, in the industry, right?
Well, I mean, even going exactly like, for example, Del Rancho, you know, big, strong Oklahoma company. I remember even when I was a kid, which wasn't crazy long ago, there were still so many units open.
Yeah.
You know, there
But
was
they never even changed the commercial. It's always like
Right.
steak sandwich supreme with the little kid,
Yeah,
right?
the little kid.
Like they didn't really like evolve with changing times,
You
right?
have to evolve. That's
Yeah.
the thing is if you don't evolve, your customers, they can be your top loyal customers. At the end of the day, if you don't evolve, you know, they get bored.
Yeah.
You know, I hate to say it, but it's the God honest truth. You know,
And also like taste and like, you know, sort of culture changes too, right? Like now I think people are trying to eat healthier.
Oh.
They're more interested in higher quality ingredients, right? Like all that changes too.
Yeah, a lot of transparency. You know,
Yeah.
people, you know, go back 20 years ago, a lot of people didn't really care. You know, they weren't asking for gluten-free stuff. They weren't
Right.
asking for vegan
If it's
stuff.
organic.
Right,
right.
or organic,
Yeah.
you know, even that. And so now, I mean, you got to be on the ball with all that stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, things change. And I think that's what's good about, for example, like with Chelino's, that my dad's been open to those changes. 'Cause a lot of people close those doors. They, you know, they close their minds. They're hard-headed or whatever.
Right.
They don't like change. Change is never fun. I think the majority of people don't enjoy change. Me, on the other hand, I'm crazy. I like the
Yeah,
change. I
that's awesome.
like pushing the limit. I like trial and error, man. Trial
Yeah.
and error. That's how you innovate.
Yeah, tell me about that. How did you sort of narrow down your menu and what kind of tacos? Because you could have done a different, I mean, it's endless, the combinations and everything.
Oh.
How did you develop your menu and like narrowing down even like the pairing with the different salsas and stuff like that?
Yeah. So actually, whenever I was going to open, I only wanted to sell tacos.
That's it.
That was it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Trompudos tacos.
Yeah.
I literally just wanted to sell tacos. But even to this day, we still get, like, we don't sell chicken, for example. You know,
Really? I
people,
didn't know that.
People go crazy. You know,
Yeah.
even every day, you know, to the drive-thru especially, can I get a chicken quesadilla? You know, and I tell my staff, well, it's kind of an issue because, you know, I started noticing at a certain point that they would get like frustrated, like, hey, this is these people's first time. Like, I was like, you got to realize any other Mexican restaurant drive-thru,
Right.
you're gonna get a chicken quesadilla. They have it on the menu.
Or if they're just used to like Taco Bell.
Right,
something like
or
that,
exactly, you know,
right?
Taco Bell, Taco
Yeah.
Mayo, whatever. You know, chicken quesadilla is, especially if it's your first time.
Yeah.
You go with
It's a
what's
safe-
what's a
safe
safe bet,
pick, right?
right?
Yeah.
You know, so whenever we get a lot of first customers, they see al pastor or they hear suadero, they're like, or carnitas. You know, maybe some people chorizo. So, you know, you can tell they're like, what the hell? Like,
They don't understand what kind of meat that
and
is,
they'll go like,
right?
oh, asada. So they'll go, you know, so
Yeah.
then they'll go with the asada. And I always tell them, you know, like, for example, the suadero is beef. The name sounds scary. I remember when I first opened, like, as I added those meats. So basically, sorry, going back to that point. So I started with al pastor, and I didn't want to just sell al pastor, you know, because tacos are, you know, I love tacos. You know, who doesn't? And variety is the spice of life. So next, I was like, okay, asada. I love asada. So we do mesquite charcoal for our
Okay.
asada, you know. And so whenever I did that, I was only making the salsa de piña for the al pastor. So I was like, man, I need to make a salsa for this. For this, you know, when I added and it's funny because when I added it, it was a little $20 Walmart Weber grill or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
literally, I still have it.
Man.
And I still have. I need to hang it up at the taqueria.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's on my long list of things to do. But I still have that thing. Unfortunately, when we moved, they were too quick and they washed it. I wanted them not just to leave it as is. Yeah, just so you can see, you know, that it's a
part of history.
Right. This is what we started with.
Yeah.
But as we started adding the meats, you know, so I did the asada and made the salsa especial. And then the suadero. I actually had a salsa in Mexico. It was actually with al pastor, but it was a chipotle based salsa.
Okay.
And what's weird is like I'm not the biggest fan of chipotle. I know, kind of bear with me, but you know, when you start going into researching dried peppers, you know, you kind of realize that Chile Morita is basically, you know, the chipotle is a dried jalapeno, dried smoked jalapeno. Chile Morita is the same thing. It's a certain type of jalapeno. The flavor changes. So, I mean, just something as little as that. It's the same pepper, just a different whatever type of jalapeno.
Yeah.
I found out, I may be wrong, but I think it's like particularly a red jalapeno, and I don't know what species or whatever.
Right.
But that's a Chile Morita. And I remember trying that al pastor with the salsa de chipotle. I was like, man, this is good. I was like, but I'm not the biggest chipotle fan. So I started researching, and then I was like, oh, here's this Chile Morita. And I was like, man, I want to make the salsa. And I made it, and then I tried it with the suadero. I was like, man, this is it. I was like, this goes right, you know. And obviously, I would have to make a little adjustments here and there, especially like the spiciness level. I really enjoy that because I never would have thought I would have like specifically like güeros, you know, Americans that we refer to güeros, eating spicy food, you know, because a lot of people don't, specifically güeros, they don't like spicy salsa or, you know, anything that's spicy. So
right, and I think that might be because a lot of people just focus on like the hot part, but not like the taste.
That's
right?
Absolutely the key. Yeah. Yes, it's so like one of the things, and that's what's hard is like I love spicy food, you know, but that's just me. But to me, the difference is you give me two salsas, the other one, you know, you can give me one that's really hot but not tasty, not flavorful. I'll take the less spicier one that has more flavor. Absolutely, all day. And that's hard. It's a hard balance to find because, you know, when you're working with smoked peppers, fresh peppers, you know, are you boiling them? Are you sauteing them? Like all of that are you using fresh garlic, fresh onion? You know, are you using
There's a lot of variables.
Oh man, you can literally make so many things. So that was a lot of fun to play with our Salsa Fuego. I remember thinking like I like spicy food, and I thought like I was good with my salsas. I was like, because I always know there's always that one guy.
Yeah, you got anything hotter?
What's the hottest? You know, what's the hottest salsa? I want some spicy. You know, so I thought I was good, but man, and I would lead them to the Salsa Morita, and they're like, you know, they would come in, they're like, no, I need something hotter. I was like, really? I was like, honestly, at that point, I was like, I don't have anything hotter. I was like, I've got the little, use chile chiltepin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which those little things are hot.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll never forget this guy, man. He was a younger guy. And I literally brought him the packet out, because they sell them by an ounce, you know, like you need but 3 of them, you know?
And you're good.
So I'm like, I've got this. I have nothing else. And I mean, he popped like 3 of them in his mouth, and he started sweating. He's like, "Oh yeah, that's what I wanted." I was like, "Dude," I was like, "You're nuts." So crazy. I went back to the drawing board and I implemented the Salsa Fuego, which is our hottest salsa. And I mean, if you need anything hotter than that, man, I mean, I can't help you. You know.
So were you just like late night, just up night, pairing with the different tacos and the different salsas? Like, how did you figure all that out? Because I think even on your bottle, you like put like, this pairs well with this kind of taco, right?
Right. So whenever I opened South May, whenever we actually moved into the building, we had at that point, for example, going back at the meat market, we were operating at the meat market while I was finishing up and getting the building ready, you know, on May. So I mean, like I physically built the bar. You know, I had to learn so many different things. You know, I still to this day hate texturing. Kudos to people working drywall. I know how to do it. It's ugly. Mine's not gonna be pretty, but I don't like it. But anyways, I had to learn how to do a lot of different things to get that place ready.
Sweat equity, just trying to get
A
it off
lot
the
of
ground,
sweat.
right?
Yeah, because especially because I mean, obviously, as soon as you sign that lease, you know, your rent, you know, your lease payment's coming, your rent's coming up, so you want to get open as quickly as possible. You know, so a lot of those things, it's like, I remember particularly plumbers at that time were, I mean, I know a ton of plumbers, they were all busy, you know, which is good for them, but they were like, man, I'm a month out. I'm like, dude, I can't, you know, for something so small. And I get it. They're not going to go when, you know, when they got a big project, they're going to make, you know, X amount of dollars. They're not going to come over, you know, and work on adding a hand sink, you know, so you had to learn how to do some plumbing.
Yeah.
But whenever we opened there, we had Al Pastor, the Asada and Suadero. We were already selling those at the meat market. So whenever we opened at the South May, we added the carnitas and chorizo.
Okay.
So I knew I needed a salsa verde, and because people, I mean, typically, I'd like to think that we're unique in that way with the salsas, because now this isn't like throwing shade or rocks at anybody, but you would go to any place, any taqueria, and most of the time you'd get salsa rojo or verde.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
You know, so I was like, man, I'm gonna need a salsa rojo or verde because I know I'm gonna get asked. You know.
Yeah.
And so since I was adding those two more meats, you know, I was like, man, I added the salsa verde for the chorizo. You know, and obviously play with it to complement the flavor aspects of the chorizo, and then the carnitas de salsa roja. And that one was a little harder actually for me to kind of fine tune. I struggled with that one a little bit.
Yeah. It almost seems like that's kind of like also like a secret like sauce, a secret like unique thing about your place, right? Like I think like you could even maybe potentially sell the salsas as their own thing, right?
That's been I've been meaning to do that since, because we offer like we sell our margaritas to go. So we have a full bar, so you know you could buy your margarita through the drive-through. You have to go and park and for right now they're working on getting that changed, but you'll have to pull around and park in parking space, and we got to deliver it into the trunk of the vehicle. But so I mean, we offer the margaritas to go, and I've been wanting to add the salsas to go.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But excuse me, I want the branding on it, and it's kind of tough because, like logistically, I don't want to have different salsas or bottles, one for margarita, one for salsas, and we have 6 different salsas. So if I do the branding, you know, I got to find a way to fit. Basically, the idea is to have the name of all the salsas, and you know you're required to have the ingredients and stuff like that on there. So for retail sale, so that way we can just mark it off. You know, somebody orders it, we fill it up then and there, and then you know mark it whatever, and they have a list of ingredients. It's kind of hard to fit that into that same bottle. I think I'm gonna have to. So that's something I've been wanting to do for like the longest. It's on my list of things to do.
I bet people ask all the time, right?
They
like,
do.
Hey, do you sell the salsas?
And it's embarrassing for me to see them, you know, 6 months later, like. Yeah, I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
I'll get to it eventually, but I mean, we do sell it. Like we'll sell it like in the 6 ounce portion or whatever. But I know a lot of people they want it in the bottle with the branding and stuff like that. Which is, I mean, obviously, anytime you can get your brand out there, you know, they buy that salsa. You know, they have a cookout, they bring it out. You know, that's free advertisement.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
So obviously, it's something important. I realize it's important. It's just one of those things that like sometimes in this business. You're a firefighter, you know, you got to tend the biggest flame, you know, you got 6 different fires going on. Which one's burning the hottest? Right. Take care of that one, you know? So that fire is very small.
Right. No, I get it. Yeah. I guess the question I have is like, you know, you've grown up around the food industry all your life, basically. How do you not get burned out? How do you stay creative? Right. Because you've probably seen a bunch, right? You've seen it all probably, right?
It's man, I don't know if I've seen it all, but I have seen quite a bit, you know, good things and bad things. Just the reality of it. Being creative, man, it's again going back to everything that I read as far as like you know the restaurant industry as a whole. It's something as simple as like I knew I needed to have a drive-through. Even then, like I'm working on, for example, I want a digital display in the drive-through. You know, so that like I want the customer as they're ordering to be able to see what they're ordering. You know, going to like McDonald's, for example, those monitors are expensive. You know, but there's things that I've researched that try to even the speaker system. I mean, it was expensive. You know, in a lot of places they'll have a drive-through, but it's really an ordering window. You know, you pull up to the window and you sit there and you wait in your car. Well, how many orders can you do at a time? If you're taking the order at the window, you know, you can't make the next sale until this car's done.
Right.
You know, so even that, I mean, that allows us, I think I've got 6 cars, like the maximum number of cars, like find like the 6 smallest cars and they fit from the pickup window to the ordering speaker. You know, the maximum orders I can have are 6.
Yeah.
You know, but that's a big advantage, right? So if we can find ways to make that more efficient, you know, thankfully we prioritize our drive-through order, for example. So we're able to prioritize if there's a drive-through order and we have like a bigger ticket, you know, well, the drive-through order is like 4 tacos. Obviously, we're going to knock that one out, you know, so we want people quick in and out. But so in order to stay creative, I mean, I just observe a lot. I'm very nosy, I guess you could say.
Yeah. It sounds like you're passionate more than anything.
I am. Absolutely. Yeah. I enjoy it. It's at the end of the day, that's the key to, I think, anything in life, especially when it comes to your career, is being passionate. And I'd like to think that my dad is proud that I found something that I'm passionate about. You know, he's always échale ganas, you know, like whatever you do, he's like, I don't care. You don't have to work in the family business. Whatever you do in life, just make sure it's something you love. Échale ganas. And I think that's important.
Yeah, no, I think that's cool. What are your goals? You were talking about branding. Do you have some goals to like expand it? Do you want to do a mobile app, a reward system? Like, where do you think you want to take this?
No, man. I mean, literally the possibilities are limitless. You know, a lot of people, again, will come in and I purposely did it too. At a certain point, I was like, I'm going to add a number 1 on the doors when you come in. Cause I want people to be like,
where's number 2?
Where's number 2? You know? So, which, I mean, there's opportunity. I mean, in this business, to even be having this conversation, honestly, first of all, I'm blessed.
Yeah.
To even be thinking about expanding. I mean, the restaurant industry has never been easy. Never been easy, but it's also never been harder than it is right now. Yeah, I mean, you're talking. You gotta know your numbers. If you don't know your numbers, I mean, you're going on hopes and wishes. You're running on hopes and wishes. You know, so and those margins are very hard to hit. So you got to make sure you keep your customers happy. You know, first and foremost, you got to keep your employees happy, and then you got to make sure everything makes sense on paper. You know, whatever product you're using, your pricing, still being competitive. And if there's anything left over, then you get to get some. You know,
and all that, and then still remain consistent.
Yes.
Right. So your ingredient prices, your leads, like all these, like may go up, but you got to keep the same quality and figure out how to make that work, how to make the numbers work.
Absolutely.
Right?
So going into this, I already knew that, you know, your numbers are very important. So going in with that mindset already, I started, you know, I was okay with Excel, for example.
Yeah.
But I polished up those skills, and then like I really took a deep dive into it.
Okay. That's cool. Cause you got to be a numbers person. Like, even like how much you keep in inventory.
That's so important. Absolutely. So, I mean, literally, like I shout out to this Excel is fun if anybody's out there and wants to polish up their Excel skills. Yeah. This guy, I mean, I think he's an actual professor, but his channel's like Excel is fun on YouTube.
Okay.
I mean, go through his playlist. I mean, start from video 1. I promise you, bear with it, you know, because it starts in the very basic. Yeah. But by the end of it, you know, I was building Power Queries, you know, like literally like all my invoices, for example, I'll download them from certain vendors. I'll download it and, you know, so every week I make purchases, right? And I was having to do that manually, knowing that going into this, that I needed to be on top of my numbers. Yeah. Well, you get tired of that real quick, right? So, eventually I realized going through that course, like I need to have a database. So I literally built out like, I call it a master product list. So every item that we purchase, for example, starting with number 1, which is I can't remember. I look at it like every day. Yeah. But it's in the freezer, and it's one of those I hardly use my freezer. No, number 2 is the chasca, which is our corn, right? So we'll come back to number 1. Yeah. But so that corn, for example, I can buy there may be 3 different vendors that sell it, right? And then those vendors may have 2 or 3 different product numbers. But so, I mean, there was a point when you would order stuff and it wouldn't even show up on the truck.
Jeez.
Right. So you got to the moment it's not on your truck, you got to, okay, where's my next,
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, I got to build a database to be able to keep up with all this because otherwise it's too much. So, jumped in on that, built out that whole database, and eventually actually right now I went so far and I've actually built an app for my staff.
Man, that's awesome.
It's an in-house app. Yeah.
Most people would think like this guy's just making tacos or whatever.
Right.
They don't know you're building databases. You're keeping track of all this Excel.
And it's, it's not that, it's what I intended to do is just one of those things where it's like, I know I need to be on top of this and doing it manually just wasn't going to, it takes up too much time and you're not consistent. And now, for example, they'll send in, they'll select, my kitchen manager will select a vendor, select whatever items they want, and then complete the order. And, depending on the vendor, it'll email it to them, like a PDF of what we're ordering. Yeah. Or it'll even text, certain vendors that don't,
awesome.
So, and that frees up my time and it gives accountability as well. So I know hey, what did you order? So we can keep up with inventory. Like, why are we down this much?
Right. Because
if you don't do that stuff, unfortunately, human nature is to think the worst. Is like, why is this is going out the back door? When it may not be the case. It may be that they purchase it from a different vendor, which is a smaller packing size. We just happen to sell X amount of something. Whatever reason it is. So you got to know all that stuff. So
yeah. One of the things I always ask my guests is to tell me something about themselves that most people don't know about. So I'm going to put you on the spot here to share something secret about yourself.
Well, I think we're kind of touching base on that. I'm a big nerd.
Okay.
I'm a super nerd. I've always been into, actually at a certain point when, in high school, the beginning of high school, originally, my freshman year, I wanted to be an astronaut, or study, what is it called? Astronomy. Study the stars.
Yeah,
study the stars. Astronomy. And, but then I got into computers and I got into gaming. So I even got into streaming when Twitch was
oh, nice.
Yeah. So I did a little bit of streaming at a certain point. That was fun. I've always been, I like to learn. Yeah. What I've kind of find out is I like to learn different realms of everything. So I like to try to know a little bit of it, not be the best, but know little bits about everything so I can at least defend myself,
Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah. I'm a super nerd. I like technology. I like, lately I like programming, so like I said, building out that app, I would have never thought I was going to, but it was kind of like the natural way it led into that. It's like, okay, well, I think this is the solution and man, it's paid off.
Yeah. That's one more tool that'll make you more competitive.
Well, even so, a lot of people ask, going back to expansion, I've been offered, opportunities have come up and, which is a great sign, when you're not looking for it and they offer them, it comes up to you. Yeah. That's typically a good sign. But the thing is, at the end of the day, if I'm not ready, it's a whole nother ballpark, a whole nother game, a different ball game whenever you have 2 units. Because when you have one, you can oversee it as much as you want, So my respects to anybody who has a multi-unit, my respects, because you can't cut yourself in half,
Right.
You can only be at one place one time,
Yeah, definitely. Well, we are getting the signal here that we're running out of time. We're kind of geeked out with, building a business and everything. So it was really cool to hear all that.
Thank you.
But, before we sign off, I'm going to give you the opportunity, plug in your socials, plug in where you're at so people can check it out. It's definitely worth the visit.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So socials, Trompudos Tacos. So Instagram and Facebook. I do have a TikTok. I did do a TikTok account. It's still up. I haven't really updated it.
You're busy building databases.
Well, I haven't touched TikTok, and definitely that has something to do with it. But even my Instagram, I've kind of slowed down a little bit because trying to build out those things for expansion. Okay. So it takes time to if you want to do it on the mindset, I got to do it right. So yeah. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and I guess X. I think the account.
Twitter changed over to X.
I think I logged into it again. It was still active. I was still able to log in. So,
awesome.
It's still on there. So, check us out there. Thank you.
All right. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The super talented Guadalupe Garcia, Trompudos Tacos on the Maverick Podcast. Keep grinding because in dreams we trust.